Sorry if this is a little bit late, I wanted to do this earlier, but here it is now, a breakdown of my New York Giants 2022 draft class. As you're going to see, I'm not going to rave about everything, but I'll definitely show more optimism here than I have in a while for this team, as this team has been a train wreck for quite some time now. However, I know as much as we want to get back on the winning track immediately, as it has been a long time, we should know not to expect this team to start winning immediately, as this team is still rebuilding. I'm hopeful though that, unlike that idiot Dave Gettleman, Joe Schoen will actually rebuild this thing properly. As far as I know, this time John Mara is letting the GM do the work and has pretty much zero involvement now, so that definitely makes me happy. So now let's talk about the Giants draft, but before we do, if you could please consider hitting the like button. It only takes 1 second, really helps out. Consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss another video. Your support is much appreciated. Now on to the draft picks. First, let's talk about Kayvon Thibodeaux, because we knew the edge rushing had to be addressed. Dave Gettleman being like, Rome wasn't built in a day, darling, about the pass rush. Well, this pass rush wasn't built in 4 years, you dunce. It was only average once in the last 4 years, and now we have Kayvon Thibodeaux, who was first team All Pac-12 the last 2 years. In 10 games last year for the Oregon Ducks, he had 7 sacks, 12 tackles for a loss, and 2 forced fumbles. This guy has a ridiculous first step and can get in the backfield just like that. My man, the entertainer talking sports, put it perfectly. Think about what Micah Parsons and a new defensive coordinator did for Dallas's defense last year. That very well could be what Winkin' Kayvon Thibodeaux could do for the Giants. Damn right. Now their next first round pick, Evan Neal. This dude's a giant, no pun intended, but he's 6'7", 337 pounds, and is about to play on the other side of Andrew Thomas, who was the one good piece on that offensive line last year. Evan Neal can pass block and run block. Finally, Daniel Jones can get some much needed protection, and assuming Saquon Barkley's not going anywhere, knowing he's not nearly elusive enough to overcome a bad offensive line anymore like he was in 2018 with all those leg injuries. Oh, thank you, Joe Schoen. Even if these picks did fall into the Giants' laps, still, the Giants addressed 2 really big needs just like that in the first round, and I think we're all very excited as Giants fans. At least I know I am. So now, while Joe Schoen did hit on his first 2 picks, and yeah, you better hit on your first round picks, but I always say, and I know other Giants content creators, or probably NFL content creators in general will say so too, that the later round is where you really make your picks count. Just ask the Rams with Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, and even Van Jefferson. Or the Bengals with Key Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Logan Wilson. Yeah, the Bengals could have taken Jonah Jackson to address their offensive line in the 3rd round, but Logan Wilson definitely wasn't a bad pick. Either way, you get the point. The later rounds is where you really make things count. At the same time, though, it's pretty hard to top what the Giants did in the 1st round. The last 2 regimes have missed out on multiple 1st round picks. Andrew Thomas is the only one outside of Odell Beckham Jr. that wasn't a total miss the last 10 years, unless Saquon Barkley gets back to what he was his rookie year. Then you can make that 2 outside of Odell Beckham Jr. Or maybe 3 if Kadarius Toney pans out, but as of now, Kadarius Toney really is a big question mark. Or 4 if also Daniel Jones breaks out, but right now, yeah, outside of Andrew Thomas and Odell Beckham Jr., the last 10 years, the Giants have not drafted well in the 1st round at all. So now, in round 2, with Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney being big question marks, and Sterling Shepard having a torn Achilles, the Giants went with Wan'Dale Robinson after trading down to get the 43rd overall pick. He's only 5'8" and was supposed to be a 3rd round pick. Now that's where I am a little bit concerned, and I know other Giants fans are too, and we may say the Giants reached here because they have question marks at wide receiver, but according to Joe Schoen, there is a plan for Wan'Dale Robinson, so that's good. I want him to actually be involved in the offense rather than just be a punt or kick returner. But I do have to give Joe Schoen a chance before I really do question if he knows what he's doing. Dave Gettleman had 4 years to earn our trust, and he failed miserably. Joe Schoen, though, this is his first draft where he actually has the final say, so gotta at least give him a chance. So what Wan'Dale Robinson brings to the table, he does have elite quickness. Well, you would hope if he's only 5'8". His ability to change directions make him a really good route runner. I also did see that he is versatile enough to make plays behind the line of scrimmage. He has shown the ability to avoid big hits, or when he does get hit, he's able to focus on the ball and make the catch, but let's see how well he can do with that when he's going against bigger and stronger defenders in the NFL. So I do see why the Giants selected him here, but I also see some concern considering he's not very big and was drafted a lot sooner than he was projected to be. Blocking is also a concern for me here because with his frame, and for any casual football fans, receivers need to block too, not just a lineman. Ask Hines Ward. While Wan'Dale Robinson does have the ability to make great catches, he also may lose focus and drop some easy passes too. So I think if all goes right, the sky is the limit for him as a slot receiver, but there are definitely question marks. I'll just hope for the best here. Another thing that may make Wan'Dale Robinson a better pick than initially thought of is based on interviews, he does seem like he really does have a passion for the game. Last year, this team had absolutely zero passion. There was no fight in this team whatsoever. So that's definitely good to know that Wan'Dale Robinson can bring some passion to this team. Now in round 3, the Giants got Joshua Ezeudu, a guard out of UNC, and UCLA cornerback Cordale Flott. The Giants are already set at tackle with Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal, and the Giants have done what they can with no cap space to improve their offensive line at all by bringing in Mark Glowinski and John Feliciano. Now bring in Joshua Ezeudu, who's very versatile. He can play tackle and guard. 4 picks in and already 2 offensive linemen. Joe Schoen is really prioritizing that offensive line. Now Ezeudu does move well laterally, so I think there is still potential here. However, there is a reason why he was a 3rd round pick. He doesn't have the best hands and needs more impact on his punches. Even with his weaknesses though, I do think he could be a week 1 starter at left guard. None of us really have faith in Shane Lemieux or Max Garcia, right? I never really looked into Max Garcia besides him having a 56 PFF grade. So yeah, I think that he's better off being a backup just based on that. So Ezeudu definitely could be a week 1 starter. If he gets better with his hands, he could be one of the steals of the draft. But if not, I see him as a depth guy, worst case scenario, because of his mobility alone. Now as for Cordale Flott, James Bradberry likely being cut by the end of the week, which I will talk about in a moment. Adoree Jackson not living up to his contract. Darnay Holmes taking a step back from last year, and Aaron Robinson still being raw. There definitely was room for improvement at corner, and I think they got a steal here in Cordale Flott. Cordale Flott is very versatile, but where he really stands out is in the slot. He's able to understand where he is in space and can definitely be really effective in zone coverage. A downside though is that he does have small hands. His hands are only 8 inches, but he is 6'1", and that's definitely not a bad height for a corner. Flott does also have a bad tendency to overthink things, but hopefully with some experience that can be fixed. And when he got beat while at LSU, it tended to be a lot more because he was hesitant and not so much because of physicality. Now this part is a retake because I couldn't finish editing soon enough, and in my original take I said it looks like James Bradberry is staying, but now from what I see it does look like he will be released by the end of the week. So that gives me the idea that drafting Cordale Flott was part of the plan with releasing James Bradberry, knowing that they can't afford to keep him. Even though Flott is more of a slot guy than an outside guy like Bradberry, cornerback still needed to be addressed regardless, and I understand that this thing will not be turned around in 1 season as much as we'd all like it to be. However, I like what I see from Cordale Flott, so I'll leave my original take on him in here. However, I do still have to talk about James Bradberry at all here because we are talking about a cornerback getting drafted, and James Bradberry was phenomenal in 2020. Last year he took a step back with a change in scheme. However, I think just based on what he brings to the table, you would have rather kept him than not if you were able to afford him. And this is just a consequence of an inept GM putting this team in cap hell. And man, I really wish Dave Gettleman can just be out of our lives now, but we still have to suffer from the consequences of his ineptitude. And one of those consequences is a tough decision like this one. So perhaps drafting a corner knowing that the team is unlikely to be able to afford to keep James Bradberry was in the plans, and I think that they will go after another corner, someone a little less expensive than Bradberry like AJ Bowie. Moving on from Bradberry certainly isn't easy, and yes, we'd rather trade him and actually get some assets back for him, but he's not willing to take less money, which I don't blame him at all for. So best wishes to James Bradberry. Just hope he stays out of the NFC East. Now, I don't expect Cordale Flott alone to be James Bradberry's replacement, but just getting any depth at all at corner, knowing the Giants are unlikely to keep James Bradberry, is likely something that Joe Schoen had in mind. And like I've said before, I'm going to trust Joe Schoen until he gives us a reason not to trust him. Now in round 4, the Giants went with Daniel Bellinger, tight end out of San Diego State, and Iowa safety Dane Belton, with the departures of the garbage bags that Evan Engram and Kyle Rudolph were with the Giants, and Logan Ryan being cut, and Jabril Peppers on his way to New England. Daniel Bellinger definitely has potential to start at tight end week 1, or maybe he might not make that immediate of an impact. I do like the pick though. He's a good blocker and he can catch. He actually didn't even drop one pass last year at San Diego State. And there's also what he can do after the catch. I think he can be a good red zone threat with his 6'6", 255-pound frame. His 40 was a 463, and of course don't ever look at combine as end-all be-all, but he does have decent speed for a tight end. His vertical jump and his bench press are just under above average. That's not too bad for someone who this team is taking in the 4th round. So overall, I do think that this is a pretty good pick. Dane Belton. Now I know that Diggy546 wasn't such a huge fan of this trade and would have rather had Brandon Smith, but yeah, Diggy546 is one of my favorite Giants content creators, by the way, so I mean no disrespect to him whatsoever. The way I see it, safety is a position of need, and well, so are a lot of positions for the dumpster fire that this team has been for some years. From what I know though, he's physical with his route redirection in zone. He plays with hands ready to intercept what comes his way and has the ability to impose size to disrupt catch attempts. Just the things that stand out to me according to his draft profile on NFL.com. Also with Julian Love being a Dave Gettleman draft pick, his spot on the team most certainly isn't safe. Xavier McKinney was actually a bright spot on the Giants last year, but the team still is thin at safety. So that definitely had to be addressed. I won't really complain about it, although according to NFL.com, his weaknesses are that his instincts from high safety are a work in progress. He's not the most athletic, doesn't take great angles to the ball, and needs to learn to attack and play out the block. What does sound contradictory here though is the fact that he has the talent to locate and track the ball downfield, which is a strength, but under his weaknesses, it says that he has no idea where the ball is at times. I guess his focus can be on and off at times, because under his weaknesses, it does say that he fails to read and react to run keys and loses track of the deepest target responsibilities. So if Diggy546 happens to be watching this, maybe these weaknesses here are what he didn't like about him. I haven't really looked too much into Brandon Smith though, but we can talk about him too in the comments if you guys would like to. Now on to day 3, rounds 5 through 7. Linebacker Micah McFadden from Indiana, nose tackle DJ Davidson from Arizona State, guard Marcus McKethan from UNC, and linebacker Darrian Beaverss from Cincinnati. So first let's talk about Micah McFadden. I like this pick. He's undersized but has good instincts, and he can definitely play in some coverage, and he's a sure tackler. We can see him in plenty of 3rd down situations. At least for now though, I think he'll most likely be used on the kickoff team. With Blake Martinez coming off a torn ACL, I do like that this team has added depth at the linebacker position. Although he does need to work on playing off blocks, what really stood out to me is his ability to shoot gaps and set up his teammates for big plays. Micah McFadden also has shown the ability to hype up his team in college. Obviously not something I'm expecting a 5th round rookie to be doing for the team this year, but maybe he could be doing so in the future, because I know I've seen Antonio Pierce be a vocal leader for the team before and he was undrafted. EJ Davidson isn't exactly a great athlete, but at 6'3", 327 pounds, we can expect him to play nose tackle and be a run stopper, filling the gaps when teams try to run the ball up the middle. Now on to Marcus McKethan, their second to last pick, another guard out of UNC, and he's absolutely enormous. He's 6'7", 335 pounds, and if the Giants do decide to move on from Daniel Jones and get a guy like Bryce Young, who's only 6 feet tall, then how is Bryce Young going to be able to see over Mark McKethan, or Evan Neal for the matter of fact? At least that's one advantage Daniel Jones does still have, is the fact that he is 6'5", even if he doesn't have the best instincts as a quarterback. Now, I don't expect Marcus McKethan to make an immediate impact. What's good about him though is that he's very powerful, he's a good run blocker, but the downside is because of his size, you can't expect him to be very mobile. Still though, I'm loving that Joe Schoen is really adding depth to that offensive line, both in free agency and this draft. Finally, Darrian Beaverss for the last pick. From what I hear, this is something that I like for more depth of linebacker, and he could be used on special teams. This guy is a hard hitter, so it does sound good to me. I'm not going to go crazy over a 7th round pick though, because they are 7th round picks for a reason, but if he is that steal that some people are saying he is, Joe Schoen, you are the man. The 16.5% missed tackle rate according to PFF though, that should definitely raise some eyebrows, but again, there's a reason why he was drafted in the 7th round. at least he does have the ability to be physical and can definitely give Tay Crowder, Justin Hilliard, Carter Coughlin, and TJ Brunson some roster competition. So what I really think of all of this, so far I like it, but we really still have to see the product on the field to actually know if the Giants really got this right. For now though, Joe Schoen, I like you, and Dave Gettleman, you can kick rocks. Hopefully, 4 years from now, I'll be making a video on how great Joe Schoen is. Maybe less than 4 years from now would work too. We still have to see the product on the field to really know though. We can definitely say though that Joe Schoen has done a lot more in just this offseason alone than Dave Gettleman did in 4 years to address the offensive line. And yeah, Dave Gettleman, this is personal for how much misery you put us through these last 4 years. And also, of course, Jerry Reese was terrible too. So yeah, finally, it does seem like the Giants do have a competent GM. Now, I still won't be jumping through the roof for our team because I know this team is not supposed to be very good this year. I'm thinking this team will win 6 games this year, maybe 7 if the Giants get lucky. Obviously, I hope this team does have the greatest single season turnaround in NFL history, but thinking realistically, that's not going to happen. I'm just happy to see a little bit of progress and any kind of step in the right direction because it couldn't have been any worse the last 5 years, right? I do want to be cautious with my optimism though because it really has been that miserable as a Giants fan. In 2020, the team was only in any position at all to win the division because the division was that weak. So for Joe Schoen's first time drafting with the final say, we think he did a good job, but we'll have to wait a couple years to know that he did a good job. So I do think that the vast majority of us will agree that day one was a big victory, but the following days our opinions may differ. But yeah, like I said, Joe Schoen deserves a fair chance. I think so far he has done the best he can with a horrible situation that he walked into, and I'm hopeful that he won't make a bad situation worse like Dave Gettleman did. I definitely see upside with all of these picks, but I also see why some people might be skeptical about the picks after the first day. And also just knowing that the Giants have been such a dumpster fire for years now, that's another reason why I understand why people are skeptical. But I'm going to be very cautious with my optimism, just knowing how bad this team has been for a while. One thing I can definitely applaud Joe Schoen for is not breaking too many of the unwritten draft rules according to 5 Point Vids. You may know I hate unwritten rules on the playing field or on the basketball court, but the unwritten rules 5 Point Vids talked about in the NFL draft are very true, and I will leave a link to that in the description if you haven't watched that yet, and if you would like to watch that too after this. One thing that might be a reach could be Wan'Dale Robinson, but again, we have to wait and see before we know. For now though, I'm going to trust Joe Schoen until he gives me a reason not to trust him. Oh yeah, he did fire Chris Pettit, the director of scouting, a guy who's been with the team since 2004, and knowing the Giants haven't drafted well the last several years, yeah, he can be gone. Joe Schoen is not afraid to clean the house, and he also fired Kyle O'Brien, another scout. I think it's good that Joe Schoen is really having a huge say in what he's doing and the fact that he's getting to choose his own scouting department. Kyle O'Brien was hired in 2021, and I'm not sure what credentials he had to land him the job in the first place, to be honest, because before the Giants, he was with the Lions and Jaguars. I'm really glad that John Mara seems to be a lot less involved now, because when he was involved, as we know, it was a complete train wreck. So that's it for now. Please consider hitting the like button if you're still here and if you haven't done that yet, and if you could please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell for more sports content from me. Not just football, but basketball and baseball too. Your support is much appreciated. Links to my social media are down below. Now, I did just break down my own team's draft, but if you'd like to see a video of me breaking down another team's draft, please let me know in the comments. Or also, if you want to share your opinions on this year's draft in general, yeah, definitely let me know in the comments and we'll have a discussion. So if you want to click either of these videos up above if you haven't yet, I'm sure you'll enjoy one or the other, and I definitely appreciate it if you do click through one of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace.